Welcome to the Veterinary Business Institute's annual Expert Panel webinar series. And for this webinar, with our Veterinary Tech Expert Panel. This one-hour live event is bringing together leading experts in veterinary technology to help you understand and leverage the latest advancements and tools to optimize your practice's efficiency and performance. Our panel will cover critical themes surrounding technology adoption in veterinary practices, offering expert insights on automation, data management, client engagement, and more. Whether you're looking to integrate new technology into your practice, improve your operations, or future-proof your practice for years to come, this session will provide actionable strategies and real-world examples to guide your decisions and strengthen your practice's technological foundation. There's a tough word to say. So I'd like to go ahead now, though, and I'd like to welcome to our panelists tonight for the webinar, Jacinte Moreau and Dr. Cindy Trice. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
It is great to have you both with us. Tonight, our veterinary tech expert panel, we are going to dig into next-gen veterinary tools for automating in 2025. And let me move to the first question, and it's a general question. Actually, this question came into us today, and it's for both of you, if that's okay, either or both of you. And the first question, the question that is what are some of the most promising emerging technologies in the veterinary industry that will significantly impact practices in 2025? Would either of you, who'd like to jump on that first?
I can give it a try, and Cindy, please feel free to jump in. First, I think the word of the year has been AI. So definitely AI-driven technology will be very in for 25 and beyond for sure. There was a survey done by AA that is talking about veterinarians and their curiosity to implement AI technology. And there's quite a bit of excitement for what AI can do. I think one of the well-known AI area is scribing, like my company, VetScribe. But there are also a lot of other areas like radiology. Some companies like Redimal, new companies, Signal Pet are very promising. I know that some veterinarians are trying those technologies. Sometimes they are very happy. Sometimes they can be a bit skeptical. But please keep in mind that the technology is advancing so fast that anything you have tried 3 months ago, if you give it a try again, could be completely different. So embracing the technology is definitely a way for 2025. There are other examples. Last week I was at AAAP and I saw a company that is evaluating horse lameness just by taking a video. It's called SLEP. It's amazing. And eventually that might come to the companion animal business. There is a new company, voice.com, that make super easy to take the vitals when a patient is showing at the hospital. So think about it. You are in the consultation room. You have the patient on the table while you're talking with the pet owner. Pretty much all the vitals are being recorded by themselves, and they are very precise. So there's quite a bit of excitement into that. Ultrasounds that will be done by AI with the help of AI are also great technologies. So I'm very, I think you can tell, I'm very excited for everything that is coming our way, like gut sounds and everything else. But Dr. Trice, please.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, certainly AI is the word of the day, and I think going to be the letters of for many years to come. And there's so many parts of practice that this is going to touch, whether it is work efficiencies like scribing or getting vital signs, things like that, and also helping us to make medical decisions, whether that's through radiology, as you pointed out, whether it's through gathering patient histories and being able to sort of pull that data from the patient's entire history, which, right now we will, used to literally flip through the record and kind of go through and use our brains to pull that medical information together. Now that's happening on the computer to some degree, but AI is going to make all of that data so much more efficient for us to make clinical decisions for pets. And I think it's going to go, beyond that. It will go to client communication, to access to care. It is going to touch every single piece of our industry, without a doubt. And I think it's super exciting to be a vet right now, to be in veterinary medicine at this time. I think this is a very exciting launch into a future that I think many of us may actually have a hard time completely visualizing right now.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I think, as you say, it is the topic that I just had a podcast the other day with a vet, and we're just talking about AI in the context of that there's still it's to look at it through the lens that it's not a complete science. It's not really a science at all. It's really a collection of information that helps translate information in a way that we don't have to. It parses it down to something that we can work with that's more efficient, but it doesn't take away the expertise and that ultimate wisdom of all that medical training and all the practices. But he said something was really interesting. He says, my first cut at AI was I recognized that I didn't write a very good email when it came to my pet parents. I was writing way over their heads, and they get frustrated, and they stop for telling me, and they try and help me. So I used AI for that. In the first week, I saved 7 hours of time, and by the second week, I was up to 10 hours. Huh. So it's kind of like filling a gap where there's a weakness. We're not all experts in everything, but it's also not giving free license to something that's going to take away our uniqueness and our brand or our experience. But thank you both for that.
And Michael, to that veterinarian, you should let them know that they can ask the AI to adapt the language for their target audience. So if they are talking with a 5th grader, they can go with kindergarten language. But if they are talking with a doctor who might be one of their patients, they can up the level. And all of that just by the touch of a key on the keyboard.
Perfect. Beautiful. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. Again, I remember as a leadership coach, I asked it to asked a question just on write to me what the power of healthy versus unhealthy conflict in an organization. And this beautiful article came out. I'm going that sounds just like me. There's some new stuff in there, but it allowed me to think differently. It allowed me to expand. I didn't have to do the primary processing. Now I could sort of play with it and bring it up to my level. So, but we can't spend all night on AI, guys. And I'm just as much of a problem here too. So I recognize that. So let me go to a question for you, Dr. Trice. Dr. Trice, effective data management is critical for modern practices. What are the most important factors to consider when choosing a data management system for a veterinary practice?
Yeah, I think there's several things to consider. And one of them is, is there integration with your existing systems? And so a software should integrate seamlessly with the current software that you're using in your practice, whether that's practice management software or whether it's laboratory systems or things like that. And that's going to help prevent, because I think sometimes practices will end up with all these different softwares that don't integrate, and then you have these data silos, and it can be hard to bring that data together and get the information out of it that you need. It can also really help streamline workflows if things will integrate. But again, a lot of, especially with newer technology companies that are coming out, they're not always integrated right out of the gate. And I wouldn't discourage you from trying new technologies and new companies before they are able to integrate, but that should certainly be on their roadmap, because at some point integrating all of these things will be really important to streamline things. I think cloud-based solutions are really important, because, what if you're a mobile practice, or people need access from out of the office? And I think cloud-based just makes a whole lot more sense in today's day and age. Maybe you're a multi-location practice, and cloud-based is going to help with that. You've got to consider data security and privacy. That's really important. There are certainly companies that can help you with that, but you want to, when you talk to companies, you want to make sure that they have, they've considered data security and privacy when they're building these softwares. And you're going to want to have security measures like access controls for your team. You don't necessarily want, they've built into the software an ability for you to have access control for different things. And these are sort of general answers, because a lot of it will depend on what the software is actually being used for. But you do want to protect any kind of sensitive client or patient information. You also want the software to be scalable. You want to be able to grow as you grow. So, you want it to be able to handle increasing amounts of data, because maybe you're getting more and more users. So kind of get a feel for how scalable is it. You certainly want it to be user-friendly, right? Like the user interface is really important. It needs to be easy for your team members to pick up on. It needs to make sense. And there's a lot of work that goes into that kind of user interface work. And you want it'll help you have much clearer workflows if that interface is intuitive to your team and to the users. And then finally, again, depending on the type of software it is, but having data analytic capabilities. The system should be able to help you actually analyze some of the data and actually extract information from that data. So you can help you identify trends in patient treatments or things like that. And again, or financial performance. Maybe it's a financial piece of software. So those are some of the things that I would think you would want to look for when you're evaluating these softwares.
Thank you, Dr. Trice. I kind of hear you're presenting different elements. In my mind, I'm thinking reverse engineering. And I'm thinking, so what? It's not about looking at what it is going to. We're looking at what it's going to do for us today. But if we think down the road we're going to be here, reverse engineering back what we're going to need today to get there. And the very nature of technology, it seems like every 30 seconds something new is happening. There's a very dynamic flow. But and one of my experience is whoever the providers are. Have they got proof of fluid and flow in their software, and can it take you to where you want to go? But I think just taking your thoughts about user friendly and all those aspects, visualize. So and I don't know how long. What's a realistic time to even look at anymore? But for argument's sake, in 5 years from now, we want it to be based on what we know today. We want to be doing this, and this. What does it need to look like today to get there?
Well, and I think to that point, I think when you're working with software companies, especially because you're right, like software changes so quickly. And I think that is only, that pace is only going to increase. So I think when you're working with a software provider, considering yourself a partner rather than a customer is really important, because it's amazing how much you can contribute to as the user to how the product actually develops. And many times, people that are developing this software may or may not have people on their team that intimately understand the pain points that we have in clinical practice. Right. And so when you consider yourself a partner with them, you really can work with some of these companies. And I would actually, that would be another thing I would vet with when considering, companies that you may be purchasing software from. What you don't want is one where you buy the software and then all help after that is you have to go to the help page or a bot. Like, you want someone who is actually where you can speak to a person and give your feedback, and ideally actually have them be interested in asking you. And that could be a great way to be an early adopter as well, to be willing to be that partner. That can get you discounts and, potentially like a free trial period or something like that if you're willing to be a partner. So there are some ways to dip your toe into some of this technology, really try it out without making a huge financial investment if you're acting as an early adopter for a company.
Yeah, excellent expansion on that point. As I think, if I was buying insurance, home insurance, would I knowingly buy home insurance that didn't cover roof damage or water damage or electrical or, no, I want a complete package. I want to know I'm covered. And I think that's the paradigm shift, is that technology is no longer, it's not an add-on, it's the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like an insurance policy. So you want to buy insurance that you can just make a phone call and say, the roof just came off my house. They said, we'll have somebody there now. That kind of, and the same thing that now in technology, and that finding those partners. That's a beautiful way to put it, Dr. Trice. Well put. There's a couple of comments came up. One from Natalie here. I don't know if either of you can answer this, but I'll throw it out here. It says, may I ask if academic veterinary schools are implementing AI and associated technologies in the curriculum or clinics?
I'm happy to. I can speak to this a little bit. I just went to this really great Hive event. NEVC has some events called Hive that tackle very specific subjects. And there was one on sort of the future of education in vet med. It was a really interesting event, and brought together deans from schools, professors, technology people, executives at some of the corporate groups. And there were all sorts of people there sort of asking the question and taking on the challenge of, what does the future of veterinary education look like? And an interesting fact was that I learned is that medical information is doubling every 72 days. I mean, impossible. It is impossible for medical professionals to kind of keep up. And I do think the schools are recognizing that. I can't say for sure if they're using AI, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is starting to be introduced into the curriculum now. And if it isn't, it for sure will be soon. And like I said, there were academic people there and deans that were talking about and asking questions. And I think that it's going to play a bigger and bigger role in education, but also like how we process the information once we're out, right? Like how we use AI as actual clinicians. And the schools do need to prepare veterinarians for how to interact in this new world where medical information is doubling every 72 days, so that we can provide the latest recommendations and treatments to our patients.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Dr. Trice, you're right. Actually, I read something recently that was mind-boggling to me, and I was thinking, how can you keep up? Apparently, for decision support, we will need AI, because there's approximately 20,000 veterinary articles published every year. So to keep up with all of those articles, and somebody would need 486 days in a year. Last time I checked, we did not have that number of days. And that would be a continuous reading of 32 hours a day. So again, I think we only have 24, and you need to sleep. So decision help, like Decision IQ or others like that, are a way for the future. And the school have to adapt, and they have to prepare our next generation of veterinarian to be able to be agile with those technology, to be on top of all of that information. And I think the question also, I will jump back a bit to the question. Somebody was asking if AI scribing solutions are being used right now in universities, and some universities are starting to provide those tools to their students. Some are developing their own. So it's coming. It's very, very, very early start, but it's coming.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. That's, the generation that's coming in school now, they only know digital. I grew up analog. I love to slide sliders and turn knobs on the soundboard at the church. Today it's all digital, and so there's the industry. Those folks coming out are so digitally oriented that they process information not by visually seeing it, but by sensing what the pages of information that are behind different apps and all these pieces. So it's going to be a very, I think the challenge will be is that each particular role in a practice, how are each of those positions interfacing with the other, and that information is a continuum. And you said it before, Dr. Trice, it's not silos. I could see that being an interesting challenge. There's a comment here, I'll just throw it up from Deborah. I appreciate your perspective on trying new companies. People talk about crawl, walk, run, and implementations. Technology should evolve. It should never be complete because things age out so quickly in this day and age. As you said, it should scale. Absolutely right. It's like change was never a noun. It was always a verb. It was never a thing. And we actually, the argument people tend to say we hate, I hate change. So no, we actually love change. I love the idea of losing 20 pounds, but I'm not so keen on the transition to get there. So it's transition that's the issue, and it's how we embrace transition and the processes to do that. So thank you for that feedback. Let's go to Jacinte. I have a question for you. Oh, by the way, you guys only have 24 hours a day. We have 25 in Canada. Huh, that's interesting. Sorry.
I have double citizenship, and last time I was in Canada, I only had 24. So,
but were you in Quebec or?
I was in Nova Scotia.
Oh well, and now my whole story is falling apart, and I'm a fraud. Jacinte, a question for you is: how can veterinary practices leverage technology to enhance client engagement, and what tools are proving to be the most effective for building long-term relationships with clients? Good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you know what? As consumer in our daily life, we're being spoiled. And retail businesses or service businesses are giving us sometimes a white glove experience. And guess what? We want to see that when it comes to our pet and going to the veterinarians. So it's very important that veterinary practice and veterinarians be ready to deliver on that. And a way to do that, making it easier, is through technology. There are already tools that exist that are great, and many of you on this webinar are already using them. But appointment scheduling, people right now, in the old days, I was calling and taking an appointment. I wanted to talk with the person. It's far in between right now. People want to do everything online. So if you can do that with Vetstoria, Calendly, go ahead and implement that. Two-way messaging app, being able to interact with the veterinary staff. That's very important when you have a pet and when you have questions. You want to have the instant response. We're all used to chat, and we do it on a regular basis in our life. So when we want to do it about our pet, it's important that we're able to do that. Telemedicine, obviously for remote area, but also for busy pet owner, some will be expecting that you offer a telemedicine service. A loyalty and reward program. Believe it or not, even in veterinary practice, people are very keen into getting rebate or discount or loyal points and everything. Dr. Stacy Stancy implemented that in her practice a few years ago, and she was herself like the first one to be surprised. And now there are companies that could help you do that, Green Line and other companies like that. Chatbot. Obviously, staff are very busy. So if people can self-serve on your website or on your phone line with system like Ava, where you have a question, you need a refill, you want to set up an appointment, you can self-serve. That's great. Reminders is the backbone of veterinary practices. Everybody does reminders, but you do that by looking at transactional and historical data. The future will change. Reminders will be done on what services or what products or what drugs or how can we keep your pet healthy. A good example of that is using a scribing service for your consultation. The AI builds your notes so the doctor can be really in the moment with the pet owner. They can bond. The veterinarians can make sure that he's looking the pet owner in the eyes and that there is the body language that is looked at and the pet owner really understands the service or the recommendation of the doctor. But very often the pet owner leaves, and one of the recommendations, for example, Lyme disease. If the pet lives in an area where Lyme is really a problem, the pet should be protected. So in the future, what we will do, we will look at the scribing notes and we will say, Dr. Walker made a recommendation for Lyme protection, but pet owner did not buy or did not enroll or did not take action on that. Let's message the pet owner with a message coming from Dr. Walker next week, just saying, hey, you were in my office, you were in the consultation with me last week, and I made a recommendation for Fluffy to receive a Lyme vaccine. Here is a little bit more information for why I believe that Fluffy should be protected. So it's hyper personal, it's hyper customized, it's coming from the veterinarians. So those type of reminders or follow-up will definitely improve the compliance with the treatment. I can talk for hours, like wearables, for example. Pets are wearing more and more of those wearables, and they get the pet owner more involved into the health of their pets. So that's a good way for the veterinarians to connect with those pet owners to make sure that the pets are being kept healthy. Think about diabetes. If you can follow the glucose curve of a patient, I mean, that's a great way to partner with the pet owners and to really help in keeping their pet healthy. So all of those examples are just to express that you can improve the accessibility. You can be top of mind with your pet owners. You're always there in their mind when they think about their pet. You increase the trust because you have continuous conversation with them. It's a personal experience, and in the same time, it might streamline your operation. So you're even being more personal, more efficient with sometimes less work. So that's what I
say. Thank you. Yeah, obviously you're passionate about that. I don't think we have to question that at all. It's what's interesting. Something you said about rewards. Something we introduced is an idea. We said, when getting a reward of leaving after the vets was they gave us a bag of treats, favorite treat, dog treats, which is awesome. And we took that, but they gave us two. I said, oh, thank you very much. Well, so the second's for, this is literally what they said. The second bag is for someone who loves pets just as much as you and might want to come here too.
That's powerful.
Do you think they got a new customer from me?
Uh-huh.
For a bag of treats. Anyway, that reward thing, sometimes it's about thinking outside the box. We do all the same. There's a lot of, and that's what's interesting when you start talking about AI. It thinks outside the box. So what are the possibilities of rewards? If you asked AI that, I have no idea what would come back, but I guarantee it'd be illuminating. So just a second. I've got a question. I'm going to print this one out for both of you, and it came some feedback here. How can veterinary practices begin to implement automation strategies to streamline their operations, and what are the initial steps towards this transformation? Before you answer that, so one of the things I find that's really important in any of these kind of podcasts or webinars is that we're going to exchange a lot of information, a lot of ideas, and it's about trying to grab something that you can be intentional with right after you get off of this? What is something you could start to do differently that you've heard that you want to apply? Not trying to, I know for me, if I try and do too many things, nothing gets done, and there's another 100 things I need to do. So these kind of questions, so we think about what's one thing that you're going to hear in the answer to this that maybe hey, I could do that, but you're going to make a commitment to do it as soon as you get off the webinar or first thing in the morning. And I find that if we break things down to small, bite-sized next right steps, we actually move the goal. It's when we try and do too much at one time, it gets stopped. And so I put that out for all of our listeners to sort of be listening for that next right step or that one aha moment or that thing that you can jump on that you could be intentional with. So I'll go ahead with the question again, since I said all that. How can veterinary practices begin to implement automation strategies to streamline their operations? And what are the initial steps towards this transformation?
I'll take a stab at that. I think one of the things is to figure out where your pain point is. You're going to have a lot of pain points. Like maybe it's making a list of where are the pain points? Where do we have workflow bottlenecks? Or where are we having other challenges? Is it staffing? Is it retention? Is it, is it inventory? Is it, are my vets, they're late writing their records? And you may find that actually you have a lot, right? There's a lot of things, and you're absolutely right. Like when you try to kind of eat the whole cake in one bite, it just doesn't work. So then it's a matter of prioritizing those pain points and picking the one that you feel either like, so there's two strategies to that. You could pick the one that's the biggest pain point, or you could pick the one that seems simplest to solve, because there is something that feels really good about achieving that and having it not be too big of a lift. And what I mean by that, so if I think about if I've got a team that maybe, because this is a common theme in veterinary teams, they're averse to change, possibly, right? And this is the way we've done it. This is the workflow, and even though it has some problems, it has some bottlenecks, and we recognize it, it feels overwhelming to change or do something different. So and this is something I learned as a relief vet, I will tell you, is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And so what it may behoove you to do, or teams to do, is to take one small thing and have the team add in a simple technology or a simple technology exercise to get used to a new, like a change and a new way of doing things. So maybe that's not, we're changing our PIM system. And everyone had, like, that always creates such mayhem in veterinary practices. And it could be absolutely the right thing to do, but maybe it's small things. And maybe it is, let's look up a way that we can surprise and delight our customers. Everyone give me a list of ideas, and I would like you to use ChatGPT to come up with it, right? So I'm just taking a little tiny step. It's low risk into a technology, ChatGPT, to help improve our practice. So that's kind of a easy exercise. I think I've kind of wound my way around here, because I think there's sort of two things I'm talking about. Is like getting your teams used to adopting little bits of technology so they get comfortable with technology. And then there's fixing your pain points and just finding one and then looking for the solution. And I think really analyzing the pain point as well, rather than just saying, if it's our doctors are staying late every night and they can't get their records done. Really doing the 5 whys, right? Why is that happening? Well, because they can't get them done during the day because we're so busy. We have so many drop-offs. Well, why can't they get it done during the day? Why can't they, get it done? Well, it's because we're packing in too many appointments, or, there's way too many clicks in the PIM system to get your records done. Whatever the case may be, but like basically digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you get to the real meat of the problem, or all the different angles of the problem, that is going to help you be more discerning when you're picking a technology solution, rather than just having a superficial understanding of the problem and then having 5 companies who offer a solution to that problem, but you don't really understand it yet. So I think I said a whole bunch of different things there.
But they all make sense.
One was helpful.
but they all make sense. I really like the why and why and why, because it's helping you define the problem. And if your problem is not stated very clearly, you will not have a good solution. So those why and why and why, it's getting you to the bottom of it. So that's key. I also, some people also have a numerical way of evaluating those pain points. So you list the pain point, you put a weight against the pain point, and then you also put a weight on, will it serve everybody? Or how much will it cost? How much energy will it take? And the mathematical model can help you prioritize as well. But all good.
Lise, thank you very much. Beautifully put, both of you. And there's a comment here about listening to feedback from the staff can often diffuse the pushback since they feel they're part of the process. So we know statistically that 70% of change organizational-wide, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, fails. That we know that's essentially the ratio. And we also know the number one reason for it is people are not valued and heard. And in that process, it's about, the question is here about uncomfortable being when you're doing weight training and you get that burn. There's a place, it's the uncomfortableness is asking the question that you don't have to agree with the answer, but you have to validate the person's space to be able to respond to it. And we always have this idea of validating or agree. I can validate. I can hear, Dr. Trice, that you have this. You want to go rob a bank, but I don't have to agree with you. But I can validate you for that. That's what you're passionate about. I might want to ask you a question why you're so passionate about going to jail, but I'm not going to rob the bank with you. But because we sometimes stick validation and agreement together, then we just don't ask the question. But the uncomfortable part is asking the question. So what as the doctor, as the practice leader, whatever what are the questions that I haven't asked that we need to ask? What do you guys know I don't know? What does that look like? If we take what could we really do? To your point, what would be a small win that we could measure that we could start to build on? So I think that's the challenge here, is being to the point of somebody getting uncomfortable and being uncomfortable. It's mostly an internal process of being okay asking a question that you don't necessarily have to have the answer, and you don't necessarily have to fix it. If that makes any sense, that's just kind of what I'm hearing. But let's see. I've got another question for Dr. Trice. Just saying, I wish I had translated one of these questions to French. Now that I know that you're French, I wasn't sure because I don't speak it well enough to do that in real time. But Dr. Trice,
just ask AI.
Yeah.
Good point. So Dr. Trice, with the increasing amount of patient data being stored digitally, that's a big deal. What are some of the best practices to ensure data security and compliance with regulations like HIPAA?
Well, lucky for VetMed, HIPAA doesn't apply to animals, so that part is good. That said, there are various regulations and other laws that will govern the privacy and protection of animal health records. So, and I think it can depend on your jurisdiction or things like that. So there's a lot of ways that our industry is addressing those issues. So sometimes there are state regulations. I looked this up, there are approximately 35 states that have statutes addressing confidentiality for pets and livestock. And generally, these laws are deemed private and confidential, or sorry, the veterinary records are deemed private and confidential, and you're not allowed to release them to a third party without written authorization from the pet owner. So that's kind of how they do that. But there's also like professional ethics and standards. So we have these professional ethics that we take the medical record very seriously, and the privacy of the patient. It's really the privacy of the pet owner, right? I don't think the dog doesn't care if his record gets shared on Instagram, but the pet parent might care. So it's really the privacy of the pet parent. And then, so practically what I've seen, really across the board at the vast majority of practices I've worked at, is that clinics use consent forms, right? They have clients sign consent forms to specify how they want their pet's information treated. Or they may flag records in their, with instructions in the PIM system or something like that. So we really can't go releasing these things to third parties without permission from the clients, or we may run afoul of regulations or just ethical standards. But so I do think some like best practices would include like employee training. So just making sure employees understand the importance of the privacy of that information, and recognizing where they need to be careful with that information. And then, again, just having consent forms and things like that.
Thank you, Dr. Trice. As a pet parent, and having actually, we had to put down our Bernese Mountain Dog just a few months ago. So I was just in the emergency of a veterinary clinic and all that. And there was a couple of consent forms that I had to sign, and I asked them why, like, what are these for? And they didn't really know. And, and I thought, I signed them. I mean, I was just curious. I wasn't challenging the system at all. But I think that's the thing I notice is about the whys. We're really good at, sometimes organizations are so transactional. Medical fields tend to be, it's all about what we do and how we do it, the science being applied to it. But in our field, in the veterinary field, it has to include the relational piece, who we are and why we matter, because it's such an integral part of the journey with the patient and the pet parent. And just giving people more, just making sure staff really understand the vision of what everything's for, what the documents are for. It's almost feels like a form of cross training, I guess I would say, in retail. But
that's such a good point, because that's such an interesting client experience to receive that answer. And it does kind of lower the trust a little bit, right? And it empowers employees to understand the why behind that, whatever the consent form is, or whatever, other sort of process that we have. So that's a good insight.
Jacinte, a question for you. Integrating practice management systems obviously can be very complex and very convoluted sometimes. What are the best practices for smoothly integrating new technology with existing systems to ensure this is a seamless workflow? That would be wonderful, but the best version of that possible, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very challenging question, and we already touched on that a little bit earlier. But Dr. Trice mentioned integration to the PIMS. I will tell you, when we talk with potential clients or clients interested in information on our scribing service, one of the first questions they ask, which PIM do you integrate with? They don't ask about the price. They don't have to ask about the ease of use. That's one of their first questions. Unfortunately, there are many PIMs out there. There are 30 major ones in the US only. So if you want to be international, it's multiplying very quickly. And some of those PIMS companies are not easy to work with. Some are cloud-based, a little bit easier sometimes. The legacy server-based, the legacy system, obviously more challenging. Some of those companies will have open API, other don't. But in most cases, it's difficult to get even their attention. And I understand that everybody is very busy, but being able to have an integration can be challenging, and not only from an energy point of view, but from a cost point of view. I had a conversation last year with a company that wanted to charge $185 per user just to give me a little bit of information. And after that, they wanted to have a revenue share. My service is sold for less than that to the veterinarians. So it just doesn't work. So it's very difficult to interact. The one thing that is very sad into that is that most of the innovation comes from startup. Those startups will create innovation, then they get acquired by big companies, but they have to make their proof. And a market or any type of business depends on innovation. And we just talked about many examples. And if smaller company like startup company cannot easily integrate with the PIMS, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the veterinarians because they cannot access the technology, or if they access it, it's so cumbersome to use that sometimes they get discouraged. The return is not even worth it. So it can impact the way that they conduct their medicine and the outcomes for the pet owner. So one piece of advice, or I would say, let's get together and fight, is for the veterinarians, when you want something, pick up the phone or talk with your PIMS company and say, hey, you have to find a way to work with them, because that would save me 2 hours a day if I could do it. That would help me do that. So it's by putting pressure and really working all together that I feel it will be easier. So it's what's coming first, the egg or the chicken. It's by using it that it's putting pressure on the companies. But if it's easier, more people would be using new services.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Jacinte. That's excellent. Thank you. We just started to touch on costs. So the next question, Dr. Trice, is going to move us into talk a little bit more about ROI, which is an acronym I'm sure everybody's familiar with, called for return on investment. But Dr. Trice, veterinary practices often face tough decisions when evaluating technology investments. What should practices consider when doing a cost-benefit analysis of new technology, and how can they measure ROI?
Yeah, I think it is a hard form. It's not a straightforward formula always, because sometimes the savings doesn't exactly translate right away to dollars. So for instance, what you would need to think about first are your initial costs, right? So what are your upfront costs for taking on this new technology? Is there hardware to it, or is it just software? What about implementation fees? And then there might be ongoing costs. So maybe there's a subscription cost to it, or maybe there's like a maintenance or support cost. So those are kind of on the cost side. And then what you think you're going to get from it. So time savings, that can be one of the more murky places to put a dollar value on exactly. And but many of the software solutions out there, that's what they're doing. They're actually saving you time. And so you need to put a value on that time savings. And whose time is it saving? Is it saving the doctor's time? Is it saving the technician's time, the receptionist's time? So you're thinking about whose time it's saving and what is the value of that time. Some things will actually help you increase revenue. So you want to kind of consider, how is it increasing my revenue, and by how much will it, does it claim to increase my revenue? And then, you have to kind of vet whether the reality lives up to the claim. It might be reducing your costs. Right. So maybe it's actually reducing costs, whether that's like an inventory type thing. It's helping you have a leaner a leaner amount of inventory. So that's going to save you costs. There's not so much money sitting on the shelf, for instance. Maybe it's helping you retain your team. Maybe it has to do with staffing or culture, and it's helping you retain your team. So there's lots of things you can think about that are reducing cost. And then again, we talked about scalability a lot, but you do want to think about what is the long-term scalability, because sometimes there is an initial investment and your return is down the road, and you want to make sure that this is you hope that it's a software that you can stick with and grow with, because they're going to change, technology is going to change, your practice is needs are going to change. So basically you need to put all of those things together to measure the ROI. So your revenue, your cost, efficiency, client satisfaction is really important to think about, because that makes a big difference. And also employee satisfaction, because turnover costs money, and hiring costs money. So those are all the pieces of the puzzle.
Thank you, Dr. Trice. Yeah, I kind of look at it through the cost benefit through direct, indirect, and intrinsic. So direct is, I just was on doing a dentistry podcast actually this morning, and they were talking about some new technology that with crowns that you don't have to come back to get your crown put in. They can do it all in the same visit. And so they've suddenly cut the chair time, which is what they talk about, from 2 hours to 1 hour with technology. So how many hours do you need to get a return on that investment of this new technology? And how does that impact the indirect benefit is that now that I free up space and time for other appointments and do things. And then the intrinsic is that this customer, we just unexpectedly delighted them because they don't have to come back. And how many friends do they tell? And I think so. It's kind of, sometimes I think that's the challenge. Technology, we tend to look at it often too black and white, and we don't look at the peripheral value that a technology brings. And sometimes, having said that, we just look at the peripheral value and we forget to look at the cost. And it was a great toy, but it hasn't made us any money, so to speak. So I think you bring it out really nicely there, that there's a logical process, but it's not doing that homework and doing the due diligence in terms of what are the cost benefits is so critical. And the long-term value, obviously, with support functions in terms of software upgrades and IT needs and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much.
And I wanted to add to that, because it's true too. It's your impression of your, like we talked about right out of the gate. I think we talked about, there's a new generation of not only workers in vet med, but pet parents in vet med who expect technology. And so part of the ROI is, the impression of your practice as a modern practice that's meeting the needs of their, which I guess goes to the client satisfaction, but also goes to hiring, because, newer vets, newer workers are not going to want to work in a practice with a tech deficit, right? They want to work in modern practices that work the way that they're used to working. So that also should be taken into account.
It's so funny, Dr. Trice, what you're mentioning. This weekend, I was at a convention, and some young veterinarians came to our booth, and they were saying, I will never do my notes like the other veterinarians, or I think she said older veterinarians are doing, because she said the technology will do it for me. And I was like, you seem to be so sure. And she said, yeah. And when I will interview for a position, I will ask them what service they provide. And I was like, oh my God, you really know what you want. And it's just very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that digital generation. They've only known the internet and technology. So they don't know what a typewriter is or what a fax machine might have been. There's no reason for them to know that. Our last question, just looking at our time, we're kind of coming to an end. You guys doing an awesome job. Thank you so much. I know we're getting lots of comments as well here. But Jacinte, the last question I'd like to ask you is, just say introducing new technological tools into the practice can be challenging for staff. Well, we've kind of already been talking a bit about that. What are the most effective strategies for training your team on new technology and ensuring they adopt it successfully?
Yeah, we already talked about that, but I want to come back on the technology and the changes that are coming ahead of us. All of us, we will live through changes in technology that will be more than what we can absorb. And it will be coming fast and furious. And welcoming the change and being able to adapt will be a key for survival. And in the veterinary industry, with 18,000 veterinarians missing by 2032, the only way that we can have a life. I mean, somebody can work maybe 32 hours a day, but if you want to have a life, you will have to depend on technology. So being able to implement and really able to roll out in practice is key. So that's falling onto the management. When you want to implement something, we said it before, sit down with your team, make sure that they understand what's in it for them, that they can voice their concern, that you hear them. And sometimes they have so much to bring that it's really the first place to start. And then when you do that, you recruit them into the project. They feel that they are part of it. And I would also always set clear goals and objective and milestone of when you will measure the progress that you're doing. Very important when you can is to do a pilot. You start small, you start with a little group, you work all of the kinks, you take the feedback of the team, and then when you feel that you're a little bit like more comfortable, then you can expand. Maybe not to the entire practice, maybe you expand the group. Having a technology champion is key as well. That person can be trained by the vendors, they can become the local expert if you want. They can advocate for the team. They can talk about the gaps of how it's being done in the practice, and it doesn't work with our team. So they can definitely be your champion. Other than that, manage and do it in small steps. Do micro learnings, do gamification if you want. Keep it simple. Live demos are great as well. Encourage the trial. So don't tell your team, don't try it only for 1 or 2 days. If the trial is 1 month, use it every day for 1 month. Don't stop after 2 days. That's not what we're asking you. Celebrate the wins. So the wins can be small, they can be big, but celebrate with the team. And communication, and lead on your vendors. They are there to help. They want to be successful, so they will be ready to help you as much as they can.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank our expert panel tonight, Dr. Trice and Jacinte. Thank you so much. You both were amazing. So much insight, best practices, actionable content, and some new ideas that I know that people are going to be able to be intentional with and take away. So thank you very much. And secondly, thank you to all our attendees for the privilege of your time and participation. Great conversation in the chat. And as I say, there's a couple of questions came up we have not answered. So those will be brought out to the panel and get answers and get them back to you. But we thank you for your time. We also, without you, we don't grow together. And by doing it together, we set each other up for success. So thank you for setting us all, each and all of us up for success tonight. A reminder to like, share, and review us on your favorite social media, and go ahead and be a part of somebody else's success as well. So until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and your pet parents, and we'll see you soon.